All right, welcome everyone. Let's dive into some fascinating stuff today about nuclear energy.
Sounds exciting.
It is, especially because we found this article from, would you believe it, the Motley Fool.
Oh, wow. The Motley Fool talking nuclear.
Yeah, and it's about these huge names in tech, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Sam Altman. They're all pouring money into nuclear power.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to look at today. Like, what's going on here? Should we all be jumping on this nuclear bandwagon?
Well, it might seem surprising, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it. I mean, the demand for electricity is just skyrocketing.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything needs more juice these days, like all those massive data centers.
Oh, yeah, right.
And don't forget the AI boom. That stuff eats electricity for breakfast.
Oh, yeah. That's true. I mean, Elon Musk is even, predicting those electricity shortages maybe even as early as next year.
Yeah, and the thing is, renewables, wind and solar, they're great and all, but they have limitations, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, what do you see as the biggest limitations there?
Well, one of the big ones is intermittency. You can't just turn the sun on and off like a light switch.
Yeah.
The wind's not always blowing.
Right, of course.
And scaling those renewables up to meet, the crazy amount of energy we're going to need, that's a huge challenge. I mean, a really huge challenge.
Right, so it's like they're great, they're important, but they can't do it all.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that where nuclear steps in?
Well, it has some serious advantages, Nuclear plants, they just pump out that electricity no matter the weather. Rain or shine doesn't matter.
Always on.
Always on. And we're talking massive amounts of power. One plant can light up a whole city. Plus, it's low carbon, which is a huge, huge plus for the whole climate change situation.
Yeah, okay. So we've got a growing need for power. Nuclear is, it's reliable, it's powerful. So let's talk about these billionaires. What are they actually putting their money into? Let's start with Bezos. Amazon, they're doing deals for these things called SMRs, right?
Yep, small modular reactors.
Small modular reactors.
Basically like mini nuclear reactors.
Mini nukes.
Yeah, you could say that.
That's kind of cool.
The cool thing about them is you can build them off-site and then just ship them wherever they're needed.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's way more flexible and potentially, less expensive than building those giant traditional plants.
So that's smart. Bezos is thinking about SMRs. Maybe that's a more immediate solution. But the article also mentioned he's backing this company, General Fusion. And that's fusion, right?
Exactly, and that's like the holy grail of clean energy right there. I mean, most nuclear plants today, they use fission. You split the atom to get energy. But fusion, that's like the sun.
Oh, wow.
You're fusing atoms together.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that from science class. So it's way more powerful.
Oh, potentially way more powerful and much less radioactive waste. That's the big thing. I mean, with fusion, you mostly get helium, and that's a harmless gas, compared to fission, where you've got, radioactive stuff that's dangerous for thousands of years.
Yeah. So Bezos he's doing SMRs, maybe short term, and then fusion, that's the long game.
Pretty smart strategy, right?
Yeah, it's a good way to hedge his bets. So then there's Bill Gates. Now this one really surprised me. Microsoft is getting into the nuclear business.
Yeah, they're investing in restarting that old 3 Mile Island plant.
3 Mile Island, isn't that the one where,
Yeah, the accident. But Microsoft's plan is to use it to power their data centers.
Wow.
Makes sense, though.
Well, it does, but it's so unexpected.
It's a good example of what we call picks and shovels investing.
Picks and shovels?
Yeah, like instead of betting on, a specific technology, you invest in the stuff that every technology needs.
Oh. The infrastructure.
Exactly. So Microsoft's thinking, hey, everyone's going to need more and more electricity. We'll be ready.
That's a clever move. A very clever move.
And Bill Gates, he's also got his fingers in another pie.
Oh, really?
He's heavily involved with this company, TerraPower. They're developing, next-gen nuclear tech. He even put $1 billion of his own money into a new plant they're building. He's really going all in on nuclear, isn't he?
Okay, so Bezos is in the game, Gates is in the game. Now we have Sam Altman, right? He's with this startup called Oklo, right? Mm-hmm. And they're tackling the really tough problem of nuclear waste, right?
Yeah, that's right. Nuclear waste is a biggie. Everyone always asks, what do we do with this stuff? And Oklo, they're designing these super advanced fission plants that actually use the waste as fuel.
So it's like recycling.
Exactly, like a closed loop. The waste from one reactor powers the next one. It's pretty amazing stuff.
So we've got Bezos doing SMRs and fusion, Gates with the old plant reboot and this new tech, and Altman going after the waste problem. They're all in on nuclear. So I guess the big question for us is this something we should be paying attention to? Should we be thinking about nuclear in our own portfolios?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. It is. But before we get into that, there's something I think we need to address. The article didn't really talk about this. But what about the global impact of all this? Like, what happens on the world stage if nuclear suddenly becomes a much bigger deal?
Ooh, yeah, you're right. That's a whole other can of worms.
It is, right.
I mean, think about it. Right now, the world runs on fossil fuels, and that creates a lot of tension.
Oh, for sure. Right.
Like some countries have all the oil and others don't, and that leads to conflict, power struggles, you name it.
Right, like what we're seeing in Europe right now.
Exactly. But imagine if nuclear power becomes more common. Suddenly, oil and gas aren't as important. Those countries that used to hold all the cards, their power starts to fade away.
Wow. That's a massive shift.
Ah.
But wouldn't it just create new dependencies? I mean, you need special stuff to build nuclear plants, right?
You're absolutely right. It's not a simple fix. And that's where companies like Parapower come in, Bill Gates' company. They're trying to develop technologies that could make it easier for more countries to go nuclear without being reliant on just a few suppliers.
Okay, so maybe it could actually spread the power around a bit.
Potentially, yeah. But even then, the knowledge, the resources, they're still going to be concentrated somewhere. So it's important to ask, who controls all of that? And how do we make sure this doesn't just become a new kind of energy monopoly?
It's like a real-life game of Risk, but with energy.
Exactly. Alliances could shift, new power players could emerge, the whole game could change.
Wow. And we also can't forget about, the whole nuclear weapons thing, right?
Right. Proliferation. The more this technology spreads, the bigger the risk that it falls into the wrong hands. So yeah, there are some very serious ethical and security questions we have to grapple with.
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, so what do we do? Just sit back and watch these billionaires maybe reshape the world?
No way. This is where we all need to be having open and honest conversations.
Yeah.
And it needs to be global, right? Governments, scientists, regular people, we all need to be working together.
So transparency is key.
Absolutely. We need rules, regulations, for things like sharing technology, dealing with the waste, making sure nobody's building bombs. Right. And we need to invest in research, figure out how to make nuclear as safe as possible.
Okay, so it's not just about should I buy some nuclear stocks?
It's way bigger than that.
It's like these investments are just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to it.
Exactly. We need to dive deeper, understand the whole picture.
Yeah. What about developing countries? I mean, a lot of them are struggling just to keep the lights on. Could nuclear help them?
It could, definitely. A lot of those countries, they need reliable power, for their people, their economies. And renewables are great, but they might not be enough.
Right. So nuclear could be like a shortcut for them.
It's possible, but we also have to be careful. I mean, what if they just end up being more dependent on richer countries?
Right. It's not just a good or bad thing. It depends.
Exactly. And speaking of global players, what about China? They're big into nuclear, right?
Oh, yeah. They're building plants like crazy.
And they're becoming a major supplier of nuclear tech to other countries. So that's a big deal.
Yeah. On one hand, it could be good, right? They could help a lot of countries.
Right. But on the other hand, will they use it for, political influence?
It's like we're watching a really high-stakes chess game.
That's a good way to put it. And we can't forget about public perception. People are still scared of nuclear. Right?
Oh, yeah. Chernobyl, Fukushima, all that.
It's understandable, but it makes things really tricky.
So it's not just the technology. It's people's feelings, too.
Exactly. We need more open discussions, more education.
It's like every time we think we've got a handle on it, there's another layer.
That's what makes it so fascinating.
It is. It's not just a simple yes or no. It's about understanding all the sides.
And that's what we're trying to do here.
We're on a journey.
We are. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to shift gears a bit and look at the actual investment opportunities in nuclear. We'll talk about the companies, the technologies, the stuff that you might actually put your money into. All right, so we've talked about why those big tech guys are, so interested in nuclear. And we touched on some of the global, implications. But now let's get down to brass tacks. What does this all mean for investors? Should we be, jumping into nuclear stocks?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Give us the inside scoop.
Well, hold on a second. I know it's tempting to, follow the billionaires, right? But nuclear, it's not a guaranteed slam dunk, right?
Right.
It's a tough business, a lot of regulations, and, people still get nervous about nuclear, and then there's the accident risk.
Right, of course.
So it's not for the faint of heart. But for those who are willing to take a bit of a gamble, well, there are definitely some interesting options.
Okay, so for those of us who like a little bit of risk, what are we looking at?
Well, you could follow the billionaires, right? Invest in the companies they're backing, like Oklo, TerraPower, General Fusion. They're all working on, really cutting edge stuff. But these are high risk, high reward plays, like investing in any new tech, really.
So it's kind of like venture capital, but for nuclear.
Exactly. So if you're feeling adventurous, those are, worth a look.
Okay, so that's one route. What if you're, a little more risk averse? Like, what are the safer bets?
Well, if you want something a little more, stable, a little more established, you might look at a company like Constellation Energy. They're the biggest owner and operator of nuclear plants in the US. So they're solid, they pay dividends. It's a less volatile investment.
Okay, so it's like that steady, reliable energy, but in stock form.
Yeah, you could say that. And don't forget about the picks and shovels approach we talked about earlier.
Right. Investing in the companies that supply the industry.
Exactly, like Emerson Electric. They provide all sorts of equipment and services to, the nuclear industry. So they benefit from the growth, but they're not, directly exposed to the ups and downs of energy prices.
Oh, so you're kind of insulated from some of the volatility that way.
Right. It's a way to get in on the action without, taking on as much risk. But of course, I have to say, we're not financial advisors.
Right, of course.
Always do your own research, talk to, a professional before making any big investment decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive. We started with these billionaires, Gates and Bezos and Altman, and now we're talking about like how to get in on the action ourselves.
It's a crazy world, isn't it?
It is, but it's exciting, and I think it's important for for everyday people to understand this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. The future of energy, it affects us all. So the more we know, the better decisions we can make.
All right, so we've talked about the billionaires, the geopolitics, all that, but let's bring it back down to earth for a minute and talk about what this means for regular investors like us.
Right. Let's talk about how to actually make some money off of this whole nuclear thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where do we start? What are the hot stocks, the companies to watch?
Well, it's still early days. Nuclear, it's making a comeback, but it's not a sure thing.
Yeah, right.
But there are definitely some interesting opportunities out there. Like you could look at those companies that are developing these new, small modular reactors, the SMRs.
Oh, mini nukes.
Yeah, exactly. They're much more flexible. You can build them in a factory and then just ship them out. So that's a really promising area.
Okay, so any specific companies we should be keeping an eye on?
Well, there's one called NuScale Power. They're pretty far along in the regulatory process. And then there's also TerraPower, of course, a Bill Gates company. They're working on some really cool stuff.
Right. So those are kind of the higher risk, higher reward plays, right?
Exactly. But if you're looking for something a little more, stable, a little less risky, you might consider, some of the more established nuclear companies.
Okay, so like who?
Well, there's Cameco. They're one of the world's largest uranium producers, and then there's also BWX Technologies. They make components for nuclear reactors. So they're kind of a picks and shovels play, right?
They benefit no matter who's building the reactor.
Exactly. So those are just a few ideas, but as always, do your research.
Of course.
Yeah.
Don't just take our word for it.
Exactly. Talk to a financial advisor, really understand the risks before you jump in.
Right. Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. We started with those, tech billionaires, and then we went global, and now we're talking about, practical investment strategies.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. But it's clear that nuclear energy is back, and it's going to be a big part of our future.
I think so too. And it's important for people to understand this stuff because the choices we make now, they're going to have a huge impact on, the world we leave for our kids and grandkids. So stay informed, stay engaged, and let's build a brighter future together.
Well said. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.